World leaders at the climate summit in Glasgow have agreed to end deforestation by 2030. Around 100 countries are signing up to the pledge, including Brazil, Canada, Russia and Indonesia, which is the largest exporter of palm oil, which has led to a dramatic removal of forestry in the country. It follows an opening day in which India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi told the conference that his country aims to become carbon neutral by the year 2070. It's the first time that India, the world's fourth biggest emitter of carbon dioxide, has announced a net zero target. Emergency teams in Nigeria are working through the night to find dozens of people who are feared trapped in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block in Lagos. The building was under construction at the time.
In Lebanon, banks opened for the first time in 2 weeks following protests that led to the resignation of Prime Minister Saad Hariri. North Korea says it carried out its third test of a new super-large multiple rocket launcher. Turkey moves tanks to positions along its border with Syria as Turkish and Russian forces start joint operations in northeast Syria. And British police appeal to two brothers from Northern Ireland to surrender. The two are suspected of involvement in the deaths of 39 people found in a truck near London last week.
World leaders have gathered in Glasgow, Scotland for the United Nations Climate Summit. They will spend the next 2 weeks setting new goals to tackle the threats posed by global warming.
It's 1 minute to midnight on that doomsday clock, and we need to act now.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he has heard leaders at past conferences make promises about protecting the planet. He borrowed from a climate activist in saying that without action, those pledges will be nothing but blah, blah, blah. In 2015, leaders from almost 200 countries promised in Paris to cut their greenhouse gas emissions. They aim to limit the rise in the Earth's temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by 2030. But UN experts say even if they meet their commitments, temperatures will rise by 2.7 degrees.
There's no more time to hang back or sit on the fence or argue amongst ourselves. This is the challenge of our collective lifetimes.
U.S. President Joe Biden rejoined the Paris Agreement on his first day in office in January. His predecessor, Donald Trump, pulled out of the accord last year. The Biden administration released its strategy for the United States to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi used the occasion to set a carbon net zero target date of 2070, 2 decades behind the U.S. He also called for swift financial support to developing countries. But Chinese President Xi Jinping, the leader of the world's largest greenhouse gas emitting nation, isn't attending the climate talks. He said in a written statement that developed countries should not only do more to tackle climate change, but also support developing nations to do better. Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio is also headed to Glasgow to join the talks.
I want to really impress upon the world Japan's determination to exercise strong leadership to realize zero emissions across Asia.
This is Kishida's first trip overseas since taking office in October. He plans to outline the steps Japan will take to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. That includes an emission reduction target of 46% from fiscal 2013 levels by 2030. Kishida is also expected to call on Chinese leaders to do more to combat climate change. The Prime Minister plans to meet separately with the leaders of the UK and Vietnam, among others. Here in Japan, officials are moving to ease some restrictions imposed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. For international business travelers who've been vaccinated, the government plans to reduce the quarantine period to 3 days from 10. Sources say the new rules could come into effect as early as Monday next week. The government previously required overseas arrivals to self-quarantine for 14 days, but that was reduced to 10 days last month for people who have had shots approved by the government. These are the ones by Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. Under the new rules, business people will now only need to self-isolate for 3 days. Once they test negative, from the 4th day, they will be allowed to use public transport and dine out. The companies they are doing business with will need to keep track of them. Officials also plan to allow foreign students to enter Japan to pursue their education as long as their schools keep records of their whereabouts. And late this month, the government aims to raise the cap on international arrivals from 3,500 a day currently to 5,000 a day. New car sales in Japan tumbled in October to a record low despite strong consumer demand. Automakers blame the pandemic, which has disrupted the supply chains in Southeast Asia. The Japan Automobile Dealers Association says the number of new cars sold in the country last month fell below 280,000, down over 30% from a year earlier. That is the lowest number for an October since statistics became available in 1968. Factories in Southeast Asia are key suppliers for Japan's auto industry. But tough restrictions on people's movements in those countries have stalled local production. That has had a knock-on effect in Japan, where car makers have been forced to scale back output for lack of parts. They say some customers are having to wait around 6 months to take delivery. Association officials say it is unclear how long the car crunch will last. In Nigeria, government officials say at least 4 people are dead after a high-rise building in the largest city of Lagos collapsed on Monday. The building was under construction. Local footage shows piles of rubble being removed by heavy machinery amid a search for survivors. According to Reuters, construction workers say that up to 100 people could be trapped in the wreckage.
Many people are inside. They are doing screeding. Electricians are inside. Plumbers are inside.
Nigeria's population of about 200 million is the largest in Africa. Construction is booming across the country as the population is growing fast. But building collapses occur frequently as regulations are poorly enforced. Turtles have long been considered lucky charms in Japan, but NHK has learned they could pose a threat to aircraft safety at Narita Airport near Tokyo. One of the airport's 2 runways was temporarily shut down in September after a large turtle was spotted trudging along it. Airport officials believe the turtle was a red-eared cider, a non-native species with a high reproductive rate. Officials believe it came from a rainwater reservoir adjacent to the runway. NHK staff were allowed to visit the pond, where they found a large number of the turtles. There is no barrier between the pond and the runway, and sightings of turtles are on the rise at the airport.
Turtles have hard shells, so they could be more dangerous for aircraft engines than bird strikes if they are inhaled into an engine during takeoff.
The aviation expert said measures need to be taken as soon as possible to keep turtles off runways. For decades, skateboarding has been tied to youth culture. But a flashy debut at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics is introducing new and older fans to the sport. NHK World's Kurita Kentaro caught up with a skateboarding novice in Osaka, who shows it is never too late to try something new.
On the outskirts of Osaka, Kinoshita Yoshio, 81, is now a regular among the skateboarding crowd.
He never gives up, even if he wipes out.
When he turned 70 and retired, Kinoshita took up swimming and marathons for his health. After training for a big event, only to see it cancelled due to the pandemic, he found himself at loose ends. Around that time, he had purchased a skateboard for $7 from a train station that was selling unclaimed lost and found items. Now he's stoked on his new hobby. In 3 months, he mastered skating in a straight line.
At first, I didn't even know the correct stance on the board and fell a lot. Hey, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, right?
Almost every day for nearly 2 years, he has been making the 30-minute commute to the skate park to learn techniques from fellow skaters. Right now, he's practicing the 180, a trick that requires him to flip his skateboard 180 degrees.
Scary, scary. My legs get tangled.
He never hesitates to ask for advice.
I knew that he was pretty serious when I saw him with a black eye about a month after starting. I believe he really loves skateboarding. He motivates us to practice harder.
Kinoshita had another mentor for the turning techniques, a 5-year-old.
You have to twist more.
It's difficult to do it like you do.
About an hour after receiving the advice, he finally nailed the trick.
It's so much fun when I'm able to do a new trick. I love it. It's rewarding.
Even when he wipes out or his form is sketchy, he never loses his sense of humor. And it's this spirit that shows you are never too old to have fun. Kurita Kentaro, NHK World.
It's time now for a check of the world weather with our meteorologist Yoko Komagata. Well, Yoko, we're seeing unstable conditions across northern Japan on this Tuesday morning. So where are your biggest concerns?
So people, especially in Hokkaido, will continue to see severe conditions for the next couple of days. A small but strong low-pressure system over the Sea of Japan will stall over northern Japan. Parts of Hokkaido have already had downpours and strong winds. More than 100 millimeters of rainfall has been reported in the southwestern tip of Hokkaido in only 3 hours. We are still expecting some severe thunderstorms that could produce downpours, damaging winds, and even hail. Meanwhile, rather mud and dry conditions are expected across the southern half of Japan. 22 will be the high for Tokyo, 23 in Osaka. Those temperatures are a few degrees warmer than usual for this time of the year. A couple of high-pressure systems will continue to produce dry conditions across northern China. Some improvements will arrive in the Korean peninsula as the high pushes in. Meanwhile, widespread showers will persist across a large portion of southern China for the next couple of days. Heavy rainfall will also affect the Indochina Peninsula due to monsoon rains. Bangkok may have heavy rain at times on Tuesday. Wet weather will also arrive in Chongqing. Seoul will have dry conditions with a high of 16 degrees. We've been monitoring a large storm system rotating over northern Europe. A long cold front attached to the storm system has produced strong winds in Italy, damaging some structures. Another round of severe weather is expected to sweep across Italy and the Balkans. People in the Alpine region may have heavy snowfall with the risk of blowing snow at times. In the meantime, conditions will be much cooler in Western Europe as the rain comes. The high will be in lower teens in Madrid. Lisbon will also have a cooling trend. It's a different story in the east. Well above normal temperatures are expected in Warsaw, Berlin, and Stockholm. That's all for now. Have a nice day.